Excellent. Great. Good. Creative. One more. Anyone have any thoughts about when you evaluate, what do you get out of it? I see. Is it Julio?
Yes. Every time I try to evaluate somebody, I have to control my ego that not present myself part of the speech. I don't want to try to improve the speech. My job there is to evaluate, not to look good. So it's very hard to find the balance sometimes because you want to do something, you want to say something, and you have to remember you just evaluate it. Don't try to shine. It's not your moment to shine.
That is fascinating. And we're actually going to touch on that later. So, very interesting insight. So, a lot of people think evaluators give value to the speaker. I'm going to clue you in on a secret. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes when we evaluate, the speaker might go, eh, right? Evaluation may provide feedback. In fact, one of the most important things that I learned, I was a target speaker at a contest once, walked in and a relatively new Toastmaster was very nervous, but I was so excited. I said, this is what Toastmasters is, right? You've been in it for 4 or 5 months and you're jumping in the contest. She gave me feedback that I still do today. She said, Cindy, when you spoke, you had jewelry on that when you gestured, it jangled, and I couldn't hear a word occasionally. I never did that again, right? We've received those nuggets. But I think if we're all honest as speakers, sometimes we get evaluations and might go, okay, thanks. Yeah, thank you. But remember, you are also profiting by being an evaluator. Being an evaluator for a lot of people, they don't like to give feedback, right? They give it up here, right? We judge people all the time up here, but we might not be comfortable saying it because we think we're going to be judged. So it's a very great thing to be able to sort of desensitize yourself when you're being an evaluator. What do you do to practice giving evaluations? Any thoughts on this? How do you practice giving evaluations?
Do more evaluations.
Do more, pretty basic, right? Do more evaluations. What else?
I have a method that I try and use for my evaluations, and each time that I give an evaluation, I set that up to where I've got, I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. It's just like I've got a set way to do it, and so I practice that.
Okay, so you have a formula. Okay, okay. And then Todd, I see your hand up.
I was going to say, go to other contests because you get to see way more different variations on evaluations. And as you sit there, you get to evaluate them and think, how would you have evaluated the target speaker or the test speaker or whatever you want to call that person? And you get to learn maybe a new technique that you might not have thought about before. And you also get to check out your competition for the next.
Oh, see, I'm not a big believer in checking out your competition. I think you should go into contests cold without doing prep work. But hey, it's a style thing, right? Remember, evaluations is not a Toastmaster thing. I was evaluating well before I was in Toastmasters. I managed people. I gave annual reviews. I gave performance evaluations. I sometimes had to fire people, and that is a form of an evaluation. You evaluate when you're a volunteer. You provide feedback. Trust me, last night I mentioned I was in a choir of 700 people. There was a lot of people giving feedback to move that many people around. So remember, Toastmasters exists not as the only home of feedback. Feedback is in the real world. And I think it's that cross-pollinating that's so important. And then why is feedback inside and outside of Toastmasters important? What comes from giving feedback? Any thoughts? What comes from when you give feedback?
We can see how other people see us or hear what we're saying because we may be thinking we're coming across one way, but we actually come across a different way.
Are you talking about the speaker or the evaluator?
The speaker.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Someone else, I see a hand up. Liz?
Yes, For me, and this was the hardest skill for me to learn, and I actually don't evaluate often because usually I'm either the speaker or the Toastmaster, but being kind, but yet saying what needs to be heard, and being more authentic, I think, because it's a risk to tell people what could help them, because you don't know how they're going to take it, but you're saying it in the person's best interest. So I think that's a good life skill.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. All right. So I'm going to ask this quick question. When you think about being an evaluator, what's the difference between it? Funny, Liz goes right to your question. What is the difference between being perfect as an evaluator and being brave? What does a perfect evaluator do in their evaluation?
Not hurt the speaker's feelings.
Okay, you talk about feelings. That's interesting. Okay. What would a perfect evaluation be? I see Julio.
Is there such a thing to be a perfect evaluator? I don't think so. We try our best, but is being brave is showing your weakness along with evaluation, because when you do evaluation, pretty much you have to put in the shoes of the speaker and try to analyze how they did it, and you need to have a format. There's different formulas to do evaluation, and usually I go to the one I learned in the past and try to fill up the blanks. And sometimes you feel like if you say something is going to hurt the speaker and you hold yourself back. And sometimes you feel like if I say that, you're gonna discourage the speaker, or the speaker is gonna step up. So it's very hard to do evaluation combine perfects and brave. I don't know if you can put both things together.
That is an interesting thing, because what I hear, and I have a magic sentence. It is magic. It works in every aspect of my life. And the magic sentence, and you might want to write this down, is all you ever get to see is yourself. Okay, I'm going to say that again. All you ever get to see is yourself. And let me use your example, Julio, of you're observing someone speak, and you would like to offer them feedback, an observation, something, and you hesitate for whatever reason. You hesitate because you think it might be not nice. You hesitate because you think they might be angry. That reveals nothing about the speaker, but it completely reveals you as a human, right? So that is a huge evaluation tip I offer, because evaluating is sort of, on one hand, pretty straightforward, but it's what your brain brings to the evaluation process that's vital. All you ever get to see is yourself. So if you're offering feedback that is critical in nature, people can be offended. I went to, as a region advisor, I went to a club once when I was traveling, and they said, oh, you need to come to this club because we like to give hard evaluations. And as the region advisor, I said, what is that? What does that mean? That is not a Toastmaster thing. There is nothing called a hard evaluation. They said, oh, we like to be super critical in our evaluations. And I said, well, I have a magic phrase. And the phrase is, all you ever get to see is yourself. So I don't know if giving critical, negative feedback to a speaker is about the speaker, or maybe it's about you, right? So really try to remember that if I don't believe, people have said to me at work or wherever, I'd like to offer you some constructive criticism. Have any of you ever heard that phrase or said that phrase? I see laughing, right? I'd like to offer you a little piece of constructive criticism, your boss says to you. Here's my mantra. There is no such thing as constructive criticism. There's feedback that's constructive, and there's criticism. And I believe as an evaluator, you have to really be clear in your own mind and presence. Am I here to be a vessel to offer feedback? Or am I here to criticize, critique. Point out the negative. Because pointing out the negative points back in time. I'm going to say that again. Pointing out the negative points back in time. So I would say, Julio, I really thought you didn't do effective gestures tonight. Number one, can Julio do anything about it since the speech already happened? No. And Julio might not like to do gestures, but I could say this, Julio, I felt in the future, you might want to play with using a few gestures to see how that feels. Because when you're evaluating and offer feedback, you're not criticizing what's happened because no one can change what has happened. If you're looking at providing effective feedback, it needs to be future focused. Future focused. So really, as you look at evaluating people and you're second guessing yourself about, is this mean? Am I being cruel? That to me is more of a self-reflective moment. You need to think, why am I doing this? And is my style helping me? And is it helping others? So just really those super great insights. All right, let's talk about what does it mean to be perfect? Do we have any recovering perfectionists here? Anyone? I am. Anyone? I see a couple hands. I see the honest ones of us are raising our hand, right? Yeah. The ones who tell the truth are. All right. So what does being perfect or a perfectionist mean? It means you're without flaw. You have the quality of being without error and you are faultless. I've known those people. I might have in my past life been one of those people. And I think when we seek to be perfect, we're really showing our own idiosyncratic needs. Because I'm going to clue you in on something. No one's perfect. Okay? No one's perfect. So let's look at perfectionism. Perfectionism to me is a ball and chain. So here is my mantra, and I learned this deeply through my family experience. Perfectionism leads to inactivity. Perfectionism leads to inactivity because I'd rather not just try it and maybe not do it well. I'd rather not do it, but I'll do that perfectly. So if you find yourself trying to be the perfect evaluator, be the perfect speaker, question yourself because you could be immobilizing yourself. Perfectionism leads to inactivity. So let's talk about being brave. Being brave means I'm ready to face, and this is the magic word, and endure the unknown. I can take it. I mean, I have a mantra I used to use as a region advisor. It's riot, relax, it's only Toastmasters, right? Riot, relax, it's only Toastmasters, people, right? So being brave means showing courage. It might mean in those moments where you're guessing in your head, should I say this? Should I say this? Be the brave one and say it. Because here's another thing. Feedback is just your strongly held opinion. It is not factual. It is not factual unless it is factual. And by that, I mean, feedback could be, oh, you exceeded the time limit by going 14 and a half minutes. That is actual measurable. But a lot of this is just our personal opinions. Keep that in mind. And being brave means being able to face something that's unpleasant. It's unpleasant sometimes to be brave. Does anyone have any feelings about the possibility of when you were brave or the thought of being brave during an eval? Has anyone ever taken that bravery plunge while giving you feedback? And it doesn't have to be in Toastmasters.
Very rare. Very rare.
You have, Kathy?
I
Nope.
said it very rarely, very rarely. I have said something that I regret saying. Maybe it was too harsh. So I have that feeling like I do want to walk that fine line with being of benefit to the speaker, but not really being critical.
So we're gonna pretend real quick here. What do you mean by harsh? Give me an example. Pretend I just did something and what would you call harsh?
Well, okay, in this club, I was the evaluator for one of our member speeches, and I criticized the way that she held her mouth at times. It seemed like it was too stern, and she did it repeatedly throughout the speech. So I thought it wasn't a good look for her.
Okay, so I'm going to give you some real live feedback on the feedback. You criticized her. Number one, evaluations aren't about criticizing.
Okay.
Okay, so they're not about criticizing. And the fact that you don't like a gesture speaks volumes about you not liking a gesture. And number two, and I'll speak, and this is funny because this is true. 4 months ago, I found out I had a tumor in my jaw. Who knew, right? That I had to have surgery on. Who knew that they had to go in and do all this corrective surgery? So for a while, I had to really hold myself like this. So we never know what's going on inside of people's minds, bodies, health. So take that in. But I think the first thing, and this is just an awareness for you, you said I criticized her. They're not called criticizes, they're called evaluations, right? So you might have said, I observed, because who can criticize that? I observed, or it seemed like you were holding your mouth in such a way that I just observed that. I thought I'd offer that as feedback. The end, right? So I think when we go to criticizing people, and it's a very natural thing for humans to do. Yes, go ahead, Wayne.
I just want to elaborate on that point. If you go to the root cause, it's why the most basic part of evaluation the Toastmaster teaches is I saw, I heard, I felt. As long as I'm dealing with those three things, I'm dealing about my personal impressions and my opinion. So I'm avoiding criticism, judgments, fault finding, etc. I'm simply experiencing what I saw and what I
Correct.
heard and what I felt. And I
Correct.
think that's
So
why they revolved to a root cause, and that's it.
yep. So when you say I saw that or I observed that, all you're stating is your reality. So but those are really great observations. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Kathy. That really gave us a really good thing to have our discussion of. And what about being brave? More often than not, being brave means you're doing it and you're scared anyway. So challenge yourself that if you're feeling happy and complacent, you're probably not being brave. But if you're getting that little twittery feeling like, oh, this is exciting, I like to think of it as exciting, not scary, you're probably going to be brave.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
When we're giving feedback, of course, we need to know, I think, what the objective of the speech was.
Right.
The other day, I heard a speech in one of our clubs that was based on selling Toastmasters to people that were not in Toastmasters. And this was a DTM giving this speech. He was trying to give a speech that would entice older people to join Toastmasters, and he was very passionate. And I could tell what I saw, what I heard, what I felt. But I had to, in my evaluation, go over the things like you had perfect eye contact, and at least for a Zoom meeting, you had limited body language and so forth. But if I were a non-Toastmaster and I was retired and I was fairly busy, I did not feel compelled. You did not tell me something that made me feel so passionate that I just had to join Toastmasters. On the other hand, you didn't tell me anything to make me hate it, but you had such excitement and enthusiasm about it. There was something missing. That did not get transferred to me. I didn't feel it. I could see you were excited, and I could say, well, good, I'm glad he's excited, but I'm not. There's a key thing that's got to come through speeches that grabs a person in such a way that you can't let them go, and they don't want to be let go. That's the magic of the really skillful presentation.
Yeah. And you also have to remember that, and I'll say you, but because it didn't grab you, doesn't mean it didn't grab 6 other people that were in the audience, because we all, and I always kind of compare it to wearing my glasses, our personal vision is so strong that we forget often that other people might be interested. They might find it enticing. But I believe evaluating goes way beyond what I see, what I felt, what I heard. For me, that's way too formula, way too formula. But let's keep talking. So let's talk about feedback and evaluation. Is there a difference? Now, I want to move through these quickly. I thought this was a fascinating diagram. So here's feedback. Feedback, I love a Venn diagram, right? Feedback. Feedback is not inherently evaluative, meaning I see you're wearing a blue shirt today. Thank you. Great. Appreciate that. Then we have judgment. Judgment might be those, I didn't like the way you did gestures. Wow, you had poor eye contact tonight. That's judgment. And where feedback and judgment match is where evaluation comes from. So when you could say, I see you're wearing a blue shirt, and I find that just makes your eyes look electric. That's the marriage of feedback and personal judgment. So let's think about that. And what I want to do now is stop sharing. And I want to go over, and I said I created these. It was funny when I was asked to do this. I came up with a couple of Cindy's. These work for me, and Cindy, these don't work for me. And I want to share them because I'm watching time here. Here's the Cindy, I don't ever want to do this. Speech happens, I come on and I say, Wayne, I loved your speech. Don't ever say that, okay? Ever. Here's why, and like I said, these are Cindy's opinions, right? This is Cindy's feedback. It might not work for you. But when you're in an evaluation, especially in a contest, people, and the person works hard, they come up and you go, I loved your speech. Your speech was great. I think that's really trite, right? And it's really canned to me. So I stay away from that. There's other ways to say that aren't those words. The other is, and I watched this happen, and I was a new evaluator at the time, and I thought, I think this is wrong. I think this is wrong. Person gave a speech about camping. It was fascinating. I don't camp. They talked about their family and how they camped and where they went. They went to a place called the Wisconsin Dells. It was a really interesting speech with resources, and it was really intriguing to me as a non-camper. The evaluator came up and said, I loved your speech. You know what? My family goes camping too. We have gone camping since I was in 6th grade. We don't use pup tents like you do, though. We have like one big tent. It takes us about an hour to pitch the tent, but oh my gosh, it's so fun. But we use a propane oven when we speak. Don't give the speech back to the speaker, right? Oftentimes when we hear a speech, we give the speech back as our evaluation. No. We are evaluating against objectives. So when you're going to evaluate someone, pull the evaluation form, read it. Here's another secret if you're competing in a contest. Pull the judge's form and read the criteria with which you're being judged. So if you go into a contest and you do not know what percentage of it is based on presentation, what percentage of it is based on use of language, I think you're going in ill-prepared. So pull an evaluation form if you're evaluating a speaker. And if you're going into a contest, pull the judge's form and read it and study it and realize, what am I being judged on? So don't give the speech back. Has anyone ever seen that? Where somebody goes up and gives a speech back to, don't you just want to scream? I'm saying I want to scream. And I've been that person, and I think, where's the stuff? Where do you have anything I can use, right? Is there anything I can use? The other one I already referred to, you can't change what's happened. So when you critique someone or offer them feedback or criticize them and say, wow, your eye contact was really off tonight. A, it can be kind of soul crushing. B, can they change it? It's already happened. So the same way of saying that data is As you develop and do our next speech, or maybe as you compete in a contest, think about changing up how you use your eye contact. You might want to log on to a Zoom meeting by yourself and look at where the camera is so you can understand where it is. So don't criticize into the past because it's kind of soul crushing and you can't change it. The other is words like you didn't, you shouldn't, and then this. A lot of people do this when they evaluate. You didn't, you shouldn't, I didn't like how you. Well, that's not what an evaluation is. I'm not here to ask you how you felt about this. The other is, remember, you can never change what's happened, especially for a new speaker. If you want to, and I think it's called evaluate to motivate. It was a big Toastmaster thing, right? If you want to evaluate to motivate people, don't tell them that they didn't do things good. Mention to them what they might do moving forward, or that they have an opportunity to try that. The other is always speak to that future moment. Speak to that future. And then I never close with, and I can't wait to see you evaluate again or to speak again. Another, I think that goes with, I love the speech and I can't wait to see you speak again. There are other things you can say. Now I'm going to go to some of my positives. And this is where evaluating can kind of be you practicing up in your head, right? To me, it's not about always having that, here's what I'm going to evaluate against, here's what I'm looking for. I believe in letting the speech wash over you. And let me explain what I mean. I was giving a speech as a new speaker. I talked about my adopted dogs, and I talked about this one came from this rescue, this one came from Lucky Mutts, and this one came from Pets R Us. And my evaluator said, Cindy, your speech would have been awesome if you'd only mentioned where all your dogs were adopted from. And as a speaker, I'm like, I said it. I mean, this is my head comment. I said it. I know I said it. He was so busy writing notes while I was speaking that he wasn't listening. So as you are evaluating someone, let the speech kind of wash over you like a wave. Listen deeply. Take your prejudices. And you know what confirmation bias is? Have you all heard of confirmation bias? Yep. We look for things that we agree with, right? So try to suspend that. Listening deeply is a skill that you bring outside of Toastmasters. It helps immensely. The next is, and this one is an intriguing one, listen for what's not there. Listen for what's not there. People tend to listen for what is there. Yes, I see a hand up. Tim.
No, I'm the timer, and so I wanted to make sure you could see me.
I think I have 5 more.
You've got 10 more.
Oh, I'm so excited now. Okay, awesome. So listen for what's not there. Does anyone have a thought on what that is? Listen for what's not there.
Phrases that help you understand where they're going.
Say that again?
Phrases that help you understand where they're going, like missing information.
Okay, things like bridges. Like I wasn't sure if there was a bridge that connected those thoughts. Okay, Liz.
I'm thinking what was missing in the speech. So you're not criticizing it, but you're saying in the future, it might be helpful if you did X, Y, Z or added these things.
Yeah. And again, that's your observation. And they might go, thanks, but yeah, no thanks. But offering different opinions like that, to me, it's like giving people a supermarket and they get to pick, well, I like that idea. Oh, I like that idea. I don't like that idea. I'm going to return that idea, right? So many different ways. And I see that Todd had his hand up.
I was just going to say, when you're listening for congruency of words, thoughts, actions, sometimes our body betrays us between what we say and what we mean, depending on how congruent you are with your message. And sometimes they could be smiling and telling you it's all okay, but it's not all okay. You know, like they might be shaking their head, or there might be some other twitchy thing that you're actually feeling, or you're hearing the inflection on the different words when it comes up and down in the sentence. And that's what I usually look for when I'm feeling for a deeper message behind the message that they're giving us.
Okay. And Julio, we'll end this one with you. Observation.
The lack of clarity. There is no progress in their thoughts. We don't know where they're going with this speech. So that's very important to see the speaker maybe come with different ideas and we don't know what he's talking or she is talking about. So lack of clarity is very important to grab it at the beginning. What is the purpose of the speech?
Right. And something also to remember is my example of, I was very clear when I explained where each dog came from. And the guy was, he was like over here, like writing. So he like, you cannot be in two places at one time, right? We all know that. You cannot be in two places at one time. You cannot be here and looking at your cell phone because both of them suffer. You cannot be listening to a speaker and writing deep notes because one or the other is going to miss. So it's finding that incredible balance. And the other, and somebody said it right at the beginning, is people need to be heard. People need to be heard. And I'm going to close, and before we go to a little Q&A, I had a speaker. I was kind of new in the speaking thing at my club, and the guy was always dressed casually. And he came in that night. And to me, this is another key that I have. The evaluation does not begin when the speaker goes up and speaks. It goes up when they walk in the door and you look at them and you observe them. What are they wearing? How are they looking? How are they feeling? So evaluating to me begins well before the speech. He walked in and he wasn't casual. He was in a suit. He was in a dark suit, white shirt, and a tie that had all of the planets in the solar system. And I was like, well, okay, that's really unique. I'm betting that's part of his speech, right? I'm like watching. He went up, and I was a newish evaluator. And he went up, and this was back in the day when we were fully in person. And he started to speak about how his belief was that there is no such thing as evolution. That is a story, it is a lie, it is not true. And that creation occurred in one day, and he was going on like this, and my little science brain went, I don't agree with that, right? That's what I was thinking in my head. I don't agree with what he's saying. I have a different thought about this. And I was feeling myself kind of getting all verklempt, right? And then I had a Toastmasters epiphanal moment. I went, Cindy, you are not here to look at Mike's speech, whether you agree, whether you believe in his philosophy. You are here to look at these notes of what you wanted evaluated. And he gave me private things he wanted evaluated. I am not here to determine whether I agree with the concept of his speech. And suddenly I felt calm and I could go back to listening to him. And at the end, when I went up, and he was probably in his late 60s and I was 40 at the time, we evaluated facing each other with the audience watching. And I went through my feedback and I talked about his use of what he was wearing, his use of being personal, his leaning on the table, his talking, his resources. I went through all the things that I observed. And at the end, he took me aside and he said, that was awesome. I feel like a better speaker because of how you listen to me. But that was my growth as a Toastmaster. It is not about whether I agree with them, whether I like it. It's about offering feedback, which is a gift. Feedback is a gift. It is not something that they need to take. And like any gift, they can keep it or they can return it. So I try to always look at the feedback I give as my honest observation against the objectives I've been offered and offer it freely and openly and bravely so that we both grow and develop. So at this point, I want to open it up for any questions we have. I see we're at yellow before we move on. Thoughts? If we don't have any thoughts, I'm going to actually go.
I have one. I don't know if you can see my hand. This
Yeah,
is
go
Liz.
ahead. No, I couldn't, but go ahead, please.
So Cindy, I'm wondering, you mentioned how you're just in the 700 voice choir and other places and how our Toastmaster evaluation skills help us other places. So what do you do when you're in another situation where they didn't ask for feedback, but you could help them? Do you just shut up, or what do you do?
Well, first of all, language is a very powerful thing. So don't just say shut up to yourself. That's a Cindy bias. I'll tell you, I had a guy who worked for me at Harley Davidson. I worked in Harley Davidson for 22 years in Milwaukee. And I had a gentleman who worked for me. And there were times that he did things that I was like, oh, like on a phone call, oh my goodness. And here's what I always said. His name was Adam. Adam, may I offer you feedback? That's the magic phrase. Adam, may I offer you feedback? And invariably he'd say no. And I'd say, and I was his boss. And I would say, okay, thank you. And then invariably 24 hours later, he'd come back and say, okay, I'm over the heat of the moment. What was your feedback? So first of all, maybe your feedback's important, maybe it's not. I think sometimes we have to get out of our own way. But if you would like to offer people, you go into it with, I say you have to have this open heart. And you say, Wayne, may I offer you some feedback? And Wayne can say, yay, or Wayne can say, I'm good. And the beauty of it is you must walk away from that knowing you offered the gift, they chose not to take it. I just wanted to real quickly while we're looking here, somebody said being nice and kind, right? Nice. I want to be nice to people. Nice is self-serving. Here, see the slide? Nice is about how you feel. Nice means I want to feel uncomfortable. It's based on your image. It's based on how you feel. It's superficial. Kindness comes from value-based information, right? So if you think about, I want to be kind, I want to be nice, what you want to be is kind. Because being nice protects you from being maybe embarrassed or feeling uncomfortable. But being kind comes from deep roots. Todd, thoughts?
I was going to say that in some of in my men's group that I belong to called the Mankind Project, we do a lot of this, what we call warrior listening. And a lot of what you're referring to is techniques that I find are more advanced than we find in Toastmasters. But because I've had the opportunity to be part of a group outside of Toastmasters, when I come in to evaluate, I bring in these extra skills that I've learned outside. It'd be interesting if we would create workshops or webinars that would teach some of these deeper probing kind of questions for the help of growing speakers and our evaluators.
I'm all in for that because this is just something, like we all have a thing, right? This is my thing. This is my vibe. This is my thing. I love evaluation. And I've been evaluated hard. And in fact, I'll be real truthful. I had a father who said to me once, he's now deceased, but he said, you're too stupid to be a veterinarian when I was in fourth grade. He said, I wrote a paper, I'm old, okay, like I'm super old, but back in the day, he said, Cindy, you're too stupid to be a veterinarian. And years later, because when you're fourth grade, well, you don't know. I said to him, Dad, why did you say that way? And he said, I was just trying to prepare you for the world because you're not good at math and science. And that's what a vet would have to do. And I said, as a 30-something, I appreciate that, but perhaps another way of doing that might have been, how about we get you a tutor for math and science to try to really upskill you in that area? So we can say things with good intent. That wasn't good. I didn't like that. Wow. I say human beings are evaluating machines with feet attached, okay? We evaluate everything. I don't like her shirt. I don't like those clothes. Boy, is the weather bad. Gauge yourself on how you evaluate people and self-check, because evaluating in a way that is relationship building is what you're looking for, not relationship splitting. I see I have a red card up, so I believe I am done. Wayne,